What if everything you were taught about loyalty to yourself, to others, to your ideals, was the very reason you keep losing? What if winning required not just the betrayal of others, but the betrayal of who you think you are? Machiavelli never advocated for cruelty for its own sake. He advocated for results. And the harsh truth is that results often demand sacrifice. Not the sacrifice of comfort, but the sacrifice of your image of yourself, your pride, your moral clarity, your sentimental loyalty to outdated virtues. To win in the real world, the person you want to be and the person you must become are not the same. And unless you're willing to kill your old self, you will never become the person who can rule, conquer, dominate, or even survive. That's what Machiavelli understood better than most. He saw that those who cling to virtue as a rigid ideal are ultimately powerless in a world that rewards manipulation, strategy, and the careful bending, sometimes breaking of moral codes. Look at history. The powerful didn't become powerful by staying pure. They became powerful by being adaptable. That means knowing when to betray, when to lie, when to discard values that no longer serve their rise. But here's the paradox: this isn't about becoming evil. It's about understanding that power isn't built by being good. It's built by being effective, by being feared when needed, loved when useful, silent when dangerous, and decisive when it counts. Machiavelli believed that appearances matter more than inner reality. A prince must seem virtuous, even if he is not, because people judge by what they see. Your actions, not your intentions. Your image, not your internal monologue. And so the self-betrayal begins with this realization. Who you are on the inside matters far less than who you appear to be on the outside. Your integrity, it's invisible. Your strategy, it's visible. That's what shapes perception. That's what wins. Consider this. When you think of betrayal, you think of dishonesty, manipulation, weakness. But self-betrayal can be strength. It means looking at the part of you that's afraid, sentimental, idealistic, canting it off. It means recognizing that sometimes your emotions are liabilities, that your loyalty to a dream version of yourself may be the single greatest barrier between you and success. The old you wants comfort, wants fairness, wants approval. The new you must want results, victory, leverage, control. And to get those, you will have to do things the old you would never do. That's the betrayal, and it's necessary. There's no honor in staying small, no virtue in losing. We're told to be authentic, but authenticity doesn't build empires. Strategy does. Machiavelli would say it's better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. And if being your true self costs you influence, power, or freedom, then maybe your true self needs to evolve. Maybe your idea of who you are is outdated. Maybe the only way to move forward is to destroy it. That's not failure. That's transformation. Self-betrayal is not abandonment. It's evolution. The person you were 5 years ago would be horrified by the person you're becoming. And that's a good sign. That means you're growing. That means you're shedding the illusions. The only constant in the game of power is change. If you remain static, you become predictable. Predictability is vulnerability. Power demands flexibility, and flexibility demands that you let go of fixed ideas about yourself. This is not a game for the emotionally fragile. Power doesn't ask for your feelings. It demands results. And sometimes those results come only when you silence the parts of yourself that beg for mercy, fairness, or peace. There is no peace in war, and life is war. Business is war. Politics is war. Even love is war if you want to keep it. The battlefield is everywhere, and your softness will be exploited. Machiavelli didn't celebrate betrayal. He just understood it was often necessary. The betrayal of others may earn you enemies, but the betrayal of your old self earns you freedom. You become unshackled from the need to be liked, the need to be good, the need to be consistent. You become adaptable, strategic, effective. In a world that rewards effectiveness, your moral confusion is a luxury you can't afford. And yet most people cling to it. They think losing with integrity is noble. But ask yourself, when has history remembered the losers? When has the world rewarded someone simply for being morally right? You can be right and irrelevant. You can be good and invisible. Or you can be powerful. You can shape events. You can matter, but not without a cost. That cost is your old self. The self that doubts, that hesitates, that wants to be loved more than it wants to lead. That's the self you must kill. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. The clarity to see what stands between you and victory. It's you, the old you, the one clinging to ideas that no longer work. That's the enemy. That's who must fall. And when he does, you will rise. Not as a villain, but as a player who finally understands the game. A player who knows that to win, you must first betray yourself, not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough to choose power over comfort, influence over innocence, victory over virtue. You're not here to be good, you're here to win. The world won't give you what you deserve, it gives you what you take. And what you take depends on what you're willing to give up, including yourself, including the parts of you that are still asleep, still believing in fairy tales, still waiting to be chosen instead of choosing. You don't need to be chosen. You need to choose yourself. Choose power. Choose transformation. Choose strategy over sentiment. This is the essence of Machiavellian thought. Not evil, precision, clarity, control. You're not betraying yourself out of malice. You're doing it because the self you're leaving behind was never designed to survive the battles ahead. It was built for comfort. And comfort is the enemy of greatness. Every great figure in history had to make this choice. The choice to evolve, to adapt, to become something their past self would never have imagined. That's not hypocrisy. That's growth. That's intelligence. That's survival. Betrayal, in this sense, is not an act of disloyalty. It's an act of realism, of insight, of choosing the hard path, the dangerous path, the path that leads to power. But that path has a price. It will isolate you. It will change you. And yes, it will hurt. But so does staying small. So does being ignored. So does being powerless. Pain is the cost either way. You can suffer from transformation or suffer from stagnation. But only one of those leads anywhere. Only one of those gives you the chance to win. And once you understand this, once you feel it in your bones, you will stop clinging to outdated values. You'll stop asking for permission. You'll stop trying to reconcile your old self with your new destiny, because they cannot coexist. One must die for the other to live. That is the law of power. That is the wisdom of Machiavelli. To win, you must first betray yourself. Not your soul, but your past. Not your principles, but your limitations. The version of you that was built by others, by fear, by culture, by childhood, must be burned. And from that fire, a new self emerges, hardened, sharp, dangerous. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. That's what it takes. That's the price. And if you're not willing to pay it, you will remain in the shadows, forever watching others take what you were too afraid to reach for. Most people will never admit this, but deep down they know they are their own jailer. They fear change, not because it's hard, but because it demands accountability. The second you admit you must change, you admit you were wrong, and the ego would rather die slowly than face that kind of humiliation. But winning doesn't care about your pride. It only responds to action. The battlefield of life rewards the one who moves first, who strikes without apology, who adapts without waiting for approval. And if that means abandoning your old story, so be it. The idea that you must remain loyal to who you've always been is the most dangerous lie of all. You owe nothing to your former self. That version of you didn't get the results. That version of you was shaped by fear, hesitation, and other people's expectations. If you want to win, you must become someone new, someone your past self would never recognize. That is not betrayal. That is rebirth. The lion doesn't explain himself to the sheep. The king doesn't apologize for the crown. And neither should you apologize for evolving. The cost of growth is high, but the cost of staying the same is higher. Machiavelli knew that the world bends for those who have the will to reshape themselves. First, be ruthless with your old identity. Cut away the hesitation. Starve the need for validation. Feed only what moves you forward. Let the rest rot. Your victory depends on it. The world is not waiting for you to be ready. It is moving with or without you. And every second you hesitate, someone else takes what could have been yours. Not because they were more deserving, but because they were more willing to become what the moment demanded. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. Power doesn't go to the best person. It goes to the boldest. It goes to the person who can shape themselves into what the situation requires, not what their feelings suggest. The tragedy is that most people think betrayal means turning on others. But the deeper betrayal, the more painful and transformative. One is turning on the person you used to be. The part of you that wanted to be understood, forgiven, safe. The part that would rather die a good person than live an effective one. But effectiveness is the only virtue that matters in a world governed by action, not intention. You will not be remembered for what you meant to do. You will be remembered for what you did. And the self that hesitates, that overthinks, that clings to morality without examining whether it still serves you, that self must be betrayed. Not for glory, but for clarity. Because to see clearly, you must strip away illusion. And your greatest illusion is that you can succeed while remaining exactly who you are now. You can't. That version of you was not built for the next level. That version was built for survival, not domination. For stability, not risk. But risk is the entrance. Fee to the upper tier of life. There is no greatness without sacrifice. And sometimes that sacrifice is not externally, it's internal. It's the death of your excuses, the funeral of your former self, and it will feel like a betrayal. It will feel like abandoning everything you once believed in. But what you're really doing is freeing yourself. Machiavelli saw human nature for what it was: inconsistent, emotional, self-interested. And he didn't try to change it, he worked with it. That's why his advice still terrifies people. It forces you to stop pretending, to stop telling yourself stories about fairness, purity, and goodness that don't hold up under pressure. You think you're being moral, but often you're just being weak. You think you're being true to yourself, but often you're just afraid of evolving. The truth is, most people use values as armor to protect their egos, not as tools to shape their future. Machiavelli would ask, if your values leave you powerless, what good are they? If your integrity keeps you poor, voiceless, or forgotten, is it still noble, or is it just naive? This isn't about abandoning every principle. It's about choosing the principles that actually lead to results. Strategy is not dishonesty, it's survival. It's choosing long-term impact over short-term emotions. And that means doing what needs to be done, even if the old you screams in protest. There is no growth without discomfort. The very fact that transformation feels like betrayal is proof of how attached we become to our limitations. You've romanticized your past self, but that person was built by compromise, built by fear, built by survival instincts, not vision. The version of you that will win isn't nice. It isn't humble. It isn't waiting. It is calculated, disciplined, cold when necessary, kind when useful, but always focused on the outcome. And that is what most people can't handle. They want to feel good now, not win later. They want to be comfortable, not powerful. They want to be seen as good rather than be great. But greatness doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't apologize for being misunderstood. It acts, it adapts, it dominates. The cost of being feared, Machiavelli said, is less than the cost of being loved and disrespected, because love is fickle. Respect based on power is lasting. And power comes from clarity, not confusion. From strategy, not softness. From action, not identity. Your obsession with being true to your identity is keeping you broke, lost, or invisible. Let it go. Burn it down. Be who the moment needs you to be. That is not weakness. That is the highest form of strength. Because only the strong can kill their former self and build something greater in its place. Look at nature. The snake sheds its skin. The phoenix burns itself to rise again. The powerful reinvent again and again with no loyalty to the past, because the past is dead. And if you're still loyal to who you were, you're already losing to someone who isn't. Stop mourning who you were. Celebrate who you're becoming. The price of a higher life is always death. Death of ego. Death of comfort. Death of old dreams that no longer serve you. And the rebirth, that's where victory lives. That's where power begins. In the silence after the fire, when nothing is left of the old you but ash, and in that ash, a new mind is forged. One that sees through illusion. One that moves with force. One that doesn't wait to be told what's allowed. It creates its own permission. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said fortune favors the bold. Not the good, not the pure, the bold. The one who risks everything for control. Not recklessly, but strategically. And the first control you must master is over yourself, not the self you were born with, but the one you build with intention. Ruthless intention. Your new self must be forged like a weapon, sharp, silent, unbreakable. That doesn't mean emotionless. It means focused. It means not wasting energy on the opinions of those who are still playing by rules you've outgrown. The truth is, no one will give you permission to become powerful. That's why it feels like betrayal, because you must break the unspoken contract that says you will remain small, soft, polite, apologetic. You must violate expectations, not just of others, but of your own mind. You must walk into the fire of judgment, of resistance, of your own internal doubt, and walk out as something new, something dangerous, something free. That freedom comes at a cost, yes. But what is the cost of remaining a version of yourself that doesn't work anymore? Who are you really loyal to, the version of you that plays it safe, or the version that wins? You can't serve both. One has to die, and the choice is yours. That's the ultimate power. Choice. That's where betrayal becomes liberation. That's where fear becomes fuel. That's where Machiavelli's wisdom stops being theory and becomes real. Because in the end, every throne is built on sacrifice. The bigger the crown, the greater the betrayal. But if you can live with it, if you can own it, you'll never need to justify yourself again. You'll just win, and that's all that matters. The voice inside you that says this isn't who I am is the voice of your limits. It is not your guide, it is your anchor. It wants safety, not success. Comfort, not conquest. And as long as you listen to it, you remain exactly where you are. Machiavelli warned against being governed by idealism. He saw how those who clung too tightly to virtue became victims of those who understood reality, because the world is not shaped by who is good, it's shaped by who acts. And sometimes those actions demand that you betray your attachments to what's familiar, even if that familiarity once felt like identity. To break through, you must break patterns. The old self is a pattern, a predictable loop of habits, fears, reactions. It was built by repetition. But the future isn't made by repetition, it's made by reinvention. When you betray who you were, you make space for who you can become. And who you can become is dangerous to the world that wants you. Docile, controlled, obedient. Your betrayal of self isn't chaos, it's rebellion against stagnation. It is how kings rise and empires begin. It is the moment you stop asking who you should be and start deciding who you must become. And when that moment arrives, everything changes. You'll stop caring who approves. You'll stop needing to explain. You'll stop apologizing for being hungry, for being relentless, for being focused on winning. Because now you understand winning is not a side effect of being good. It is the reward for being strategic. Machiavelli's world is not some dark fantasy, it's reality stripped of illusion. And in that reality, the only question that matters is this: are you willing to become who victory requires? If yes, then let the betrayal begin. Not of others. Of the weak version of yourself, the outdated version, the afraid version. Kill him, bury him, and take the throne. You were not born with purpose, you must forge it. And forging anything of value means cutting away everything that weakens it. The weak metal, the unnecessary weight. And yes, even the parts of you that you once thought sacred. The lie you've been told is that growth can be painless, that evolution is graceful, but real transformation is brutal. It shakes your sense of self, leaves you alone in unfamiliar terrain, and demands you move forward with no guarantee of reward. That's why few ever rise, because they're waiting for certainty, waiting for signs, waiting for someone to give them permission to act. But permission never comes, not in the world of power. Machiavelli understood this. The ones who rise are the ones who act when others hesitate, who reshape themselves not once, but over and over again. They do not bow to fear, they use it. They don't ask what they're allowed to become. They decide what they will become and pay whatever price is necessary. That's the path of power. And on that path, betrayal is not the sin, it is the requirement. Not betrayal of loyalty to others without reason, but betrayal of your inner boundaries when those boundaries keep you small. Betrayal of the voice that says, don't be too ambitious, don't make others uncomfortable, don't stand out too much. That voice is not your friend. That voice is the chain tied to your potential. It speaks in familiar tones. It sounds like caution, morality, humility, but it's fear dressed in virtue. And Machiavelli would remind you virtue without results is irrelevant. To achieve anything real, you must choose effectiveness over sentiment, clarity over emotional comfort, transformation over tradition. You must become the version of yourself that can seize the opportunity others are too afraid to touch. That version of you doesn't care about being liked. It doesn't hesitate when it's time to act. It doesn't need the world to say you're doing the right thing. It already knows what's necessary, and it executes. Most people never get there. They keep their old skin long after it stops fitting. They stay in the room long after the door has opened. They cling to beliefs that never served them just because they were taught to. But you are not here to repeat the mistakes of those who stayed asleep. You are here to awaken, to rise, and to do that, you must betray the parts of you that would rather dream than dominate. Domination does not begin with others, begins with the self. Conquer your doubt, your fear, your obsession with being perceived a certain way. Let the world think what it wants. Let them gossip, judge, criticize. They are irrelevant. The only judgment that matters is your own. Can you look at the new version of yourself, the ruthless, clear-minded, strategic version, and respect it? Can you wake up knowing you're no longer lying to yourself about what it takes to win? Because the moment you stop lying is the moment you start winning. Brilliance was in exposing the lies we tell ourselves. That good things come to good people. That patience is always a virtue. That honesty always leads to trust. It doesn't. Power leads to trust. Strength leads to influence. Action leads to results. If you want loyalty, win. If you want respect, it. If you want freedom, take it. And none of those things come without a price. That price is the comfortable version of you that waits for the world to be fair. That version has to die. Not with bitterness, but with finality. You do not owe it a second life. You owe yourself the future. Every time you hesitate to betray your limitations, remember this: the enemy is not outside you. The enemy is who you were. And every decision you make is either keeping him alive or burying him deeper. Choose wisely. No one's coming to save you from yourself. Only you can do that. And that rescue begins with a betrayal. A sharp, decisive break from who you were. You're not the same. You shouldn't be. Growth demands that you violate your past. That you do what your old self swore you'd never do. That you walk away from the narrative of who you thought you had to be. Power doesn't care about your story. It responds to force, clarity, commitment. You either become the kind of person who commands outcomes, or you remain a footnote in someone else's legacy. The world is full of forgotten people who never had the courage to shed their old selves. Don't be one of them. Stop trying to make peace with your past. Make war with it. Burn the scripts that kept you small. Refuse to repeat them. Refuse to fit the role. You are not here to follow. You are here to shape, to lead, to dominate your space so completely that no one can ignore your presence. That doesn't start with others, it starts with the choice to betray yourself. To look in the mirror and say, I will no longer protect the version of me that failed. I will become what is necessary. I will do what must be done. I will win. And if that means I must kill the man I used to be, I won't hesitate. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. That's how leaders are born.